Hey gang, TacTile King here, and today we're going to be learning about the new strategy game TacTile, which is available on Board Game Arena, and how to play it. So TacTile is an abstract strategy engine building game, and your goal is to race across this randomized modular four-color board and score your pawns before your opponent. While you're advancing, you can get resources from the tiles that your pawns are on, and use those resources to purchase these action cards that are available for sale. These action cards get added to this tableau that you're building, and they're permanently added to the tableau, and they give you free actions when you move on those color tiles in the future. So this game has a ton of snowball potential where you basically are building up your ability to do more and more things as the game goes on until eventually you beat your opponent and win. There's a ton of strategy around positioning, basically, and how you build this tableau. So you need to think very carefully about where you're putting your pieces to get the resources you need to buy the cards you want, and then to activate those cards so that you're being efficient as you play the game. So it's super simple in its rules, but really deep and complex in kind of how that strategy evolves. And in this video, we're going to go ahead and break it down. I'm going to teach you how to play, teach you some of the BGA specific features, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the quick beginner strategy tips. So without further ado, let's get into it. So how do we play? So first, let's talk about the objectives. So there's a different objective for each player count. So 2-player has its own rules on how to win, 3-player has its own rules on how to win, and 4-player has its own rules. In 2-player, you are trying to cross the board diagonally and score both your pawns in your opponent's home base. So in this case, I'm blue, starting in the blue corner. I'm trying to score both my pawns in yellow. And my opponent is yellow, is starting in the yellow corner and is trying to score both their pawns in blue. In 3-player, you're trying to score your pawns to each adjacent home. So I would be starting in blue and I would be trying to score one pawn in the green home and one pawn in the red home. So this creates a little bit more of some head-to-head confrontation early on in the game. And then in 4-player, you're back on the diagonal and it's now a 2v2 partner game. So me and yellow would be on the same team, and as a team, our goal would be to score 3 of our 4 collective pawns. So that means we would each have to score 1 pawn, and then whoever's closer would get the 3rd pawn in, and that would be the win condition for our team. In 4-player, there's also a couple partnership abilities, special abilities that are only available in 4-player, and I'll talk a little bit more about those as we get into how to play the game. Okay, now that we know how to win the game, let's talk about how to play. So every turn in TacTile, you have these 2 basic actions. That's what these red cubes stand for. You're going to get to take up to 2 actions, but you cannot take the same action twice. Now these actions on this card over here, these are your basic actions. And the way you take them is by clicking on the corresponding white box. It'll move an action cube over, and that'll tell you that you're taking that action. And then certain things will highlight up. That's the things that you're able to do. So you can take 2 actions per turn, basic actions, and these are the 5 basic actions you can do. The first one is called a move action, so that's moving to an adjacent available tile. So if I click one of my pawns, I can now move to one of the tiles that is around me. That is a move action, move to one adjacent available tile. The next action is called a gain action. So a gain action allows me to collect a resource based on where my pawns are. So here I'm on blue and red, so I could gain either a blue or a red resource. The next action I can do is called a buy action. So if I have resources for sale, I can or resources available, I can purchase a card. There's always 6 cards for sale in the card market. They always cost 2 resources. On BGA, my resources are directly under my player icon over here, so you can see how many of each resource you currently have. So I have a blue and a yellow, so right now I could buy one of these push cards. Okay, when you buy a card, it's added to your tableau down here, and that's where you'll see it. The next ability is called the swap ability. This allows you to swap a resource you have with any of the other resources in 1-for-1. So the way it works is you would click swap, you would pick the resource that you want. So in this case, maybe I want a red resource, and then I have to tell it which resource I'm giving up. So I could give up either my yellow or my blue resource to swap for that 1-for-1. Okay. This is a really important ability to very quickly buy cards, so keep an eye out for it. In 4-player, this has an alternate ability, so I can either use it to swap resources or I can use it to swap cards. So in that case, I would just simply click the swap icon again, and I would go to my partner's tableau and I would click on the cards that I want to swap with them. All right, that is a very powerful ability in 4-player that allows you to very quickly score and help your partner out. Okay, and the last ability is the reset ability. So when I click reset, it resets this card market. It does this question which asks you to confirm if you really want to reset the cards. This is good for denying your opponent certain cards. This is helpful for giving yourself more options if the market is kind of not very forgiving. Okay, so that's it for the basic actions. You can take 2 of these per turn. You generally want to always take 2 basic actions, but you can always say done with turn if you're finished and you want to skip some of these actions. So the next thing are the card actions. So there's 3 different types of card actions. You have moves, gains, and pushes. The way the card actions work is I have to move onto a color tile that matches the color of cards I own in order to activate them. So here I own these 2 yellow cards, so I'm going to move my pawn onto yellow, and when it does that, it activates these 2 cards that I own, and now I get 2 more actions because I moved onto yellow. So the move action allows me to move again, so I get a free move because I moved onto yellow, and that means that if I move back onto blue, I can now activate all my blue cards, and that's how I would chain actions together. Okay. Gains allow you to gain resources based on where you are. So it's the same as the basic gain action, but these are now for free because they're part of my tableau. And so I have 3 gains here. I can buy like a ton of stuff. So in this case, maybe I want to get a red resource because one of my pawns is on red. So I'll go ahead and gain here. The other action is called a push action. So it allows you to move another person's pawn. So here I'm going to go ahead and buy a push, add it to my tableau. So that's part of my potential actions. It's not active because I haven't moved there yet. And then basically pushes is like the opposite of a move. It allows me to move somebody else. Generally, you want to kind of move them away from tiles that they're trying to move on. So my opponent's trying to move on yellow because they have a bunch of yellow cards. So if I could push, I might want to push them away from yellow. Okay. All these cards will simply reset on my next turn. So once I finish my turn and I do all my actions and I'm done, the next turn they all reset. So if I'm able to move on those colors again, I can activate and use those cards again. Okay. So that is the basic actions of the game. That is the cards that you can purchase and how to use them in the game. And there is one other ability. It's called Overdrive. So it's up here at the top. The way Overdrive works is it allows you to sacrifice 2 actions that are available to you, and you can get one of the 6 possible actions in exchange. So for example, I'm going to go ahead, let's say I don't need these gains. I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice them. And now I give them up, I exhaust them, I don't get to use them for their intended function, but now I can get any one of these 6 possible actions in exchange. So let's say I want to activate this red push I just bought, okay? But I need to move on to red to activate it, and I don't have any more moves available. If I sacrifice these 2 gains, I can actually do another move, and I can move on to red. Now I can use that push I just bought. And remember, my opponent wants to move on to yellow. I can now push them back so they're farther away from yellow and can't activate their cards. So Overdrive is really helpful, especially if you get stuck, or it also is helpful if you want to kind of snowball your cards into doing things that they're not intended for. You sacrifice a little bit of efficiency to gain a lot of potential and flexibility with your engine. Okay, it's really important, especially as you get more cards. It really opens up what you can do in the game. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of how to win. That's the basics of how to play. That's a quick overview of Overdrive. And then the last thing I'm going to give you is a couple of tips for beginners. So 3 things I think you guys should focus on as you're starting the game. The first thing is you want to be very aggressive in this game. And what I mean by that is you want to be constantly moving forward and constantly buying cards. All right, that increases your potential to win. For that in mind, I typically recommend that beginners try to purchase one of these gain cards and one of these move cards at the beginning. Gains help you buy cards. You really want to get some gains early on. And moves are how you kind of combo your cards together and race to the finish. You want to get a bunch of these. So starting with kind of one of each of these is a really powerful early game engine. The second thing is you guys really want to, the strategy for the game is about like forming these pathways. So as I'm trying to cross the board, it's helpful to think and try to find like a 2-color pathway that connects your base to your opponent's base, and then try to just focus on buying cards of that color. It makes it so it's more easy to activate each of your different cards and actions. It kind of concentrates your actions. So in this case, red and green forms kind of like a nice pathway. If I was the yellow player, I might try to focus on buying red and green cards. For me, maybe blue and yellow kind of forms a pathway. Might want to focus on trying to buy those colors. Concentrating your cards allows you to get more actions consistently. So it's just a little efficiency tip. And then the third thing is if you guys do get kind of stuck, you feel like you're having a hard time moving past certain tiles, call it the 1-tile mile, make sure you're looking for opportunities to use Overdrive, especially converting things into moves. You can convert basic actions as part of Overdrive. So if you have one card and a basic action, that's enough to turn it into a move that can help you get past kind of annoying tiles that you don't have a move on. Okay, so that was a lot of tips, a lot of rules and instruction. Good luck, everybody. There's a lot of learning resources available on the YouTube channel, Friendly Bee Game Company, so feel free to check that out, as well as the Board Game Geek page for TacTile. So look it up on Board Game Geek if you want to learn more, get some more strategy tips. And if you had fun and you want to support the game, it is available for sale on Amazon if you're out of the US, or on the Pledge Manager on Gamefound if you're outside the US. I'll have links to both of those in the description section of this video. And without further ado, good luck and enjoy playing TacTile.